everybody should have a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Were there any corrections or additions to that?
Okay.
If not, can I have a motion to approve those?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Old business, I really didn't have anything for old business. Anybody else? Okay. The next thing that I kind of wanted to get so that the committee was up to speed on things was the timeline for the process. And you guys met with Pete today, so if you would want to just kind of give us an update, and then I would like Brandy to email out a copy of just kind of the next 90, 120 days tentative agenda or tentative schedule for the process.
Sure. That might be a little bit sketchy right
Sure.
now, but
Just
we had a discussion this afternoon with Pete. A lot of our discussion talked about what the next steps were going to be. And you might remember what the plan was moving out of the last discussion, was that there would be individual opportunities to meet individually with the business owners with a couple of different options, talk to them about the estimates, talk to them about what the plan was on their property, and talk with them about the cost associated with those plans. During those conversations, the idea, the plan here was that Brandy and Pete and I would meet with each one of them, and that he would focus in on the technical side of things and on the actual improvements and the needs. Brandy and I's responsibility during that conversation will be to dialogue with them about their actual interest in the project. The discussion we had at the last meeting was we're no longer going to be begging people to take part in this process. If they indicate to us at that time they're no longer interested, they come off the list. The idea behind this discussion would be not to force them to make a decision there on the spot, but to set a deadline that roughly a week and a half from that meeting, Brandy and I would then be contacting them or sitting down with them again, and that we would need a final answer at that time whether or not they intended to move forward as part of the project. And if they don't, we can start to vet out some of these people to find out who's going to take part and who isn't. We have set up to try to do these meetings we're thinking the February 26th and the 27th will be the 2 days that we just got off the phone with him this afternoon, so we're still trying to put these together. But the 2 days we're targeting to have these 30-minute meetings with each of them is about the 26th and 27th of this month. Pete felt that he could have his information ready and available to do it during that period of time, and it will leave it to us to kind of set it up and put it together. What we talked about is each of us probably take half the list of businesses, and each of us would be responsible for contacting half of them and try to get them all set up. So that will allow us to start limiting exactly what the scope of the project is. By the middle of March, we should know who's going to be involved, what they're doing on their properties, and what the estimates associated with those properties are going to be. Then we're ready to really start doing the serious work of putting together. We know what we're up against. We know who's going to be involved. We know what we need to be bidding out, and we can start getting that ball rolling.
And before that ball gets rolling, we also have to have those drawings and everything set up to ship roll and approved, and that will take some time too.
So he is going ahead and developing the 3-tier plan for each building that currently is there?
Yes.
Okay.
The 33
The
or
33 buildings that were on there, the 27 building owners.
It sounded like he was doing that ahead of time and coming up with the options of must,
small, medium,
could,
and large.
He is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Small, medium, and large.
There you go,
It's
yeah.
really a hard job for him, to work on
And
what
all
he
of
has,
it.
but what little we know.
And let's be all honest, and I just simply think that it's important for us to have full disclosure here. The rough estimates that he presented to us without the contingency, the 20% contingency, was about $950,000. You add in the contingency, he was talking in the neighborhood of just short of $1.2 million. Why those numbers sound quite large compared to our expectations. I'm not overly shocked at those numbers, and the reason why I said it's for a few things. One is I expect during the vetting process that we're going to have we're going to have some attrition in this process. I expect it to be in the 30 to 40% mark of attrition. If you expect that and you assume that as part of the project, and you also assume that several of the partners are going to choose a lesser model option in dealing with the issue. I think a good part of the problem is going to correct itself during the vetting process. So I don't think right now is the time to panic about the fact that the estimates are much higher than what we want them to be for the project. I think it's just important for us at this time to know that based upon reasonable expectations and how this process is going to work, that does not, I don't think it should shock us or concern us too terribly much at this point.
Especially since, we started out with 33 buildings, and we're not the only communities doing this. Lamar's just submitted theirs at 40 buildings, and same things estimating wise, same problem we have.
Yeah, Pete and I talked briefly just before I came, and really 20 is a more manageable project than 30 or 40. And the way it would work is if, say, things would allow, we have the final numbers, and we'd have, say, hypothetically 20. You can still get the 500,000. It's just simply doing a contract amendment with the state, revising how many buildings there are, what the addresses are, and what the local match is going to end up being. That's something you don't do until after you get bids and everybody signs their construction agreements and acknowledgements, and but I'm not surprised.
Just administrative, really.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about what he was estimating that, because I knew in the application it was way low.
And that was his indication too. He felt
Well, plus we've lost one building owner, the death, so that. This wasn't, we lost one building owner when he died, Cordes,
Oh,
so,
sure.
yeah, so that pretty much eliminates that one, I would think, so.
Yeah, he's not included in these figures that we have today. The other thing that we talked about a little bit today was when we are talking with building owners, we're going to approach them with the fact that contingency is going to be built in to the final figures they have. This is a security measure.
We talked about strategy on that. Treating it as if, in a way of explaining it, would be to treat it as insurance built into the project. That if, we heard the story down in Manning that in at least 2 cases they dug into the fronts of buildings and found significantly more work than they expected. And so, while it may not take care of all the additional costs associated with it, if you have some contingency built in, it allows them some comfort that if we find something, they're not in it by themselves. And why you might have some, and Pete warned us about this, you might have some on the front end that say, well, I'm wanting to put this type of money into my business, why are you building this extra amount in? Well, we could be doing something with it. Well, how many times have we heard during these discussions that it's prudent for us to try to be reasonable in the expectations that they're going to find things that they didn't originally plan for.
So just to back up here a minute on the timeline, tentatively late February 26th, 27th is when the first meeting with the business owners will take place.
By March 15th, we should have vetted and know who's going to be invited.
And then after that initial meeting, roughly a couple weeks, we'll have a deadline that they get back to us with what they want to do. Is there a form that they're going to fill out for that? I think we need to document it in
Kind
writing.
of a commitment form or something.
Yeah.
There will have to be at that point. And I'm pretty sure that Connie Nelson from Manny will send me some forms
Okay.
that we could probably change and use.
Now, just as a guesstimate for you, Steve, so because I know you want kind of more of a window, and Fred probably would have much more expertise in this than I would. But that means that from March 15th, then we can start family building the bid plan at that point. Would you say mid-April might be a reasonable expectation to maybe go out for bid around
No,
mid-April?
no,
You think
it
that's
would
too
be,
soon?
it'd be too soon because.
There might be changes to the
Once-
plans from the business
Yeah,
owners,
and
right?
once Pete gets, not the final design, but pretty close, and that's when we send in all the SHPO stuff.
Oh,
With
SHPO.
Ship
I'm
them from
forgetting
there.
SHPO.
Yeah, with a design plan.
Okay, SHPO comes after when the business owner decides what they
Yep.
want to do.
Yep.
Okay, so
Then
the
all
next
the
step-
drawings are submitted to SHPO, and SHPO has to approve them before the bids can be let,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
So you gotta get final drawings, then SHPO, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much close to final. And
June?
then- Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, really, that's
That's-
kind of what
that's
he
what I-
said before, is we won't
Yeah.
even go out till June.
So final drawings probably April 1st.
And then you'll have to leave them out there for, 3 or 4 weeks?
SHPO has a 30-day comment period, but it can take longer than that. And then once they approve everything, then you can't approve any bids until after they approve every one of the buildings that's in the project.
Can you do those
Final drawings will be
simultaneously?
submitted to SHPO when, approximately?
April, it looks like.
Late April?
Yeah, when the
First.
site inventories are done and when he's got a drawing for everybody, you know, a design for everybody that's
Yeah.
gonna be in.
Then we're talking, June.
And then the
before
final thing they would sign would be after we get bids, the owners come in again and say, okay, here's the bid. At what level can you afford? And then they sign the construction agreement, and then they're locked in, where they put half of their match down before construction starts, and
So
then.
that's like July or August, right?
Um,
You break
it may
ground by
be,
August
Yeah,
1st.
I'm thinking like July, August.
August
right?
1st.
yeah, it could be. Just have to see how it plays out.
Again, I just kind of wanted to have
So
an
we have an
idea,
idea.
so
I think we can play with the
everybody
plan.
has an idea. Now, as far as the contractors that we've talked about, do they understand we're gonna be coming and asking for a bid, so they aren't booked all summer? Or, I mean, obviously, we gotta fit into their time frame too.
Yeah, it's important to time the bid. And, you know, a good time to bid is, you know, in the fall, line things up for spring, or in the winter, line things up for spring, so.
I mean, did Pete indicate if he's, I mean, obviously, he works with the group right now,
That group.
but did he indicate that what their schedules were for summer?
We haven't talked about that.
You know,
So we don't even know if we're gonna have a contractor that's going to be available to start work once,
Once they get all the stuff lined up.
well.
I mean, isn't this kind of the same situation that Manning was in? Isn't
Um,
the timeline about the same?
it's
or
about the
Why
same.
is it,
About the same.
It's about the same.
so why would it be any different for us than it was for them?
Ours
We
is a-
don't know what the contractors have already committed themselves to. They're just like street contractors. Every year's different. They commit themselves and they commit how much resources and manpower they have, and then they schedule all of their manpower accordingly. So every year's different. Just because fall is typically good doesn't mean that this
They
fall,
don't have
they
a big
already
fall.
committed till next year. I mean, that's
Okay.
you have no control over that process.
Right.
And I don't know about Cornerstone, but Renaissance has, besides the guys working in Manning, Terry has crews that are working other projects around the state.
I'd be shocked if it was an issue for you.
And they, no, I don't think it'd be an issue. They shift back and
Okay.
forth depending on what trade they need at that time.
Okay.
Because they figure they've got different teams doing different portions, so they're
Yeah.
usually a lot more flexible than you would imagine.
So we're estimating construction work to start around,
August 1st, maybe.
Maybe. It depends on, really it's gonna come down to, you know, getting the commitments of the owners, getting the estimates. We had in Adel, we had 2 days of meetings with the owners in Adel, and that went really good. And some of them had, it was gonna be more money than they thought it was gonna be, but everybody seemed to be committed and asked them, you know, how much can you put into it, and what are your priorities, and what do you want your building to look like, and it went good. I didn't think I needed to be there, but I got a lot of questions about the grant process and things like that, so. And then some other questions came up about technical stuff to meet the grant requirements and guidelines, and
Yeah, one issue, and this is kind of, I'll wait till later. I'll bring this up with other business.
Okay.
Something I need to talk to Fred about.
So just to kind of reconfirm, late February for the first meeting, middle March for deadline on who's serious about it. April 1st, probably final drawings to go to SHPO. That hopefully be back somewhere May 1st. And
I would give design at least a couple more months after meeting with the owners to get what they want.
Final.
At least a couple months or more for design.
Okay. So move probably when it goes to SHPO back to June 1st.
Yeah.
If I'm moving back that far, if we're gonna give them another, 30, 60 days.
He's pretty fast, and he's gonna have the 3 drawings done at least
Yeah.
within the first time.
So we would
So
let
maybe
bids
speed
around
things up.
July then?
Yeah, maybe. The Schipple person is on maternity leave until
Oh, no.
May, but Leslie Leaguer is my contact, and she knows the Schipple stuff too. But they take. We had a couple buildings in Manning. It took them about 45 days to get the Schipple clearance because there's an issue about the ultra, whatever you call it, percentage in the windows, and it was a thing about 69% versus 72% or something like that. But Schipple finally went along with it, but that held it up for about 15 days over the 30.
It just amazes me they can get caught up in something like that.
So that,
So Shippo, June
that would bump
1st,
construction to around September.
mid-July, hopefully start
Yeah,
construction in August.
and then then you have to consider, do you want to delay construction until spring so you don't have the winter interruption? And that's kind of an owner thing too. And
Well,
we
will
thought
we have to get
thought
all of the building owners to agree to either we start this fall or we start next spring? I mean, you can't have part of
That's-
them start.
Yeah, that's something we're gonna have to talk about down the road, but in Manning, we could have, we thought we were gonna be done by now, but then when it came in so cold, and I was down there last week, and they're down to 2 guys there, one working on Debs, and the other one was doing some interior work in the 18-inch facade. But I was amazed. The Cliff's place, I almost walked by it because I didn't recognize it.
It looks a lot different,
It
doesn't it?
turned out so good.
Probably the best thing for us to do, Laura, is once we're ready to go out for bid, once we're close to being ready to go out for bid, that's when we need to really make a hard decision on when they're gonna break ground and when they are. We could speculate about this all day long, but until we know
Right,
where we
I
are
just
in shape.
thought I would bring up the question, I mean, don't we have
Oh,
to do
yeah.
this all at once?
I think it's
Yeah.
definitely a question we have to ask ourselves, whether or not we think
And-
we can get the whole project in this year or not.
And I guess it will be up to the construction company to tell us really what their thoughts are on it. And if it has to go into winter, does that not increase construction costs if they have to?
Well, you have 2 setup fees.
Right. Wouldn't we be better off waiting till spring then, just
You could be.
because of budget wise, that it'll increase
Mhm.
costs if they have to deal with winter?
I bet the company they'll want to do it all at once.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think they
won't
would.
split.
Yeah, because of they.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would think that cost wise, we would almost be better off as a whole waiting till spring then and not even dealing with the ifs
Your
of.
costs go up.
That could be a possibility.
Construction costs will go up too.
Yeah.
I guess, Brandy, would you just send Pete an email and ask him his thoughts on, just so we have an idea if we're getting into August.
Maybe you
if
could
it's
just give him the
something-
timeline we sort of worked out and see if he thinks that's reasonable.
And we'll know more after the meetings on the 26th and 27th
Yeah.
too.
We have to keep in mind that after we go through this process with the building owners, even if we lose half of our building owners, we still have 16 and 17. And that also takes time, lessens Pete's time for all the things he's doing too. I mean, it's been so
Yeah.
lengthy now because he's doing this for 33 buildings, when he should only be doing this on 20 maybe at the most, so that should shorten it up. But I will ask him what his thoughts are on that.
And also in the timeline.
In this contract, will have a big difference of whether it's 33 buildings or 20.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll find out a few more details, and then if you just email us his response once he gets them. And obviously, it's the next item on the agenda, prioritize improvements. We really don't know if we need to do that right now, but again, Manning did have to make that decision on what happened, what they were gonna spend the money on, and
I think it would be nice to have that figured out now before we go in and start talking to building owners.
How do we know whose building's we're gonna have to prioritize though? If
Not
that's in the plans.
necessarily prioritizing, like with Manning, they had a setup where they knew they wanted to do doors and windows, that was an important thing, and tuck pointing. So if those are the
Those
things
were
that
the
we wanna
three
move to the
priorities.
top of our list.
And again, personally, I think those are the three things that are a big priority for us is
Because they're
tuck-pointing,
structural.
windows.
But that building owner has to agree to it. Doesn't matter what our
That's right.
priorities are. If that building owner, I mean, if we say you need windows and tuck pointing and they say I'm not in, then
Yeah.
it's not
I
our
wanna do a
priority.
sign.
I mean, yeah,
I wanna do awnings and signs.
yeah.
And I think maybe at this point, we just let them know that, we're planning on, whatever's proposed, we're gonna try to come up with a way to help everybody. But if it gets to the point where the project's $1 million and we have 600 or 700 that's available, then, the priorities are going to be to the structures. Again, I'm just giving you my thoughts.
I think that's a good plan.
And
Because I think we need to save buildings before we need to make them pretty.
Well, and one
And
thing.
at Adele, it was kind of interesting because without any coaxing at all, when the architect there was going through what they wanted their building, and it was pretty much a consensus with all of them that, well, I want to put my money into this and that, not the signs and awnings, and I'll do that later.
Again,
For
those
the
are
most
It's
part.
less
relatively.
It just came
cost.
about.
Yeah, it just makes sense, I
Yeah.
think.
And I
Well-
guess, again, let's ask Pete for maybe some direction there as far as what we could.
What do
I
you
think it's just.
recommend we say to the
I think it's
business
very
owner?
important that the business owners understand that, when he meets with them the first time, that just because, if you're asking for a $100,000 project, it might not all be funded. And if it's not all funded, then this is kind of how we're going to prioritize it.
And I think
Does
that'll
that
all
make
come about
sense?
naturally. I mean, with his drawings, the least one is the must-haves anyways, and he's gonna have those listed first.
Okay. But again, I want this group to be thinking about that so that if we do have to,
We're all
Make a
on the same
decision.
page in those conversations too.
yeah. And I
If
don't-
people start asking questions of us
Uh-huh.
as the oversight committee, then we need to know that we're not doing awnings first.
Any other comments for prioritizing there? Everybody has a sheet here in their packet of some questions from the historian. And I think Shirley, you were able to find a lot of those answers.
I found a lot of them. There's
Okay.
only 2 of them that we're still questioning, and that is the original purpose for the building where Wanda Salon is. And I went to the oldest people I could go to that still remember. Late 80s and 90s, and we still don't know for sure on a couple of them. But we got all the rest of the answers I've sent to Leah already, so.
Okay.
And I have one of the pictures, I can't find the other one yet, so.
Which ones did you have questions on? Or-
I didn't have that in my packet.
I don't know if I
That's
do
your
either. I
second,
just have
it's
two
this one
pages.
right here.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all the questions, but I didn't.
I had the answers.
Oh, no.
I just had
Oh,
the
I
answers.
thought we had a
know.
copy of the answers.
No.
Okay, sorry,
Um,
misunderstanding.
Basically, the Saxon, nobody knows what the original purpose was of the Saxon building. Because there was a 2-story building there that was a jeweler and housing, and there was, so, and Blessington's building in between JP Trucking and Saxon is gone, that we know what that was. It's nobody remembers what that building was for, so. And certainly, the best guess we can get at, remodeling the outside of it was, I think, 1973 or something. According to Reflections book. I went back through all the history books and the history of W.H. Hart and talked to Dwayne and William Ford and Phyllis Conger, and so we're doing the best we can. I think that Hank Blau used to have his office in Wanda Salon building, so they may even have a photo, which we don't have of that building at all. So we'll see if we can find that. There's no pictures of South Fifth Street. There's pictures,
Or
North Fifth Street.
Street.
There's South Fifth Street
There's
on
one
this
in the
side.
right corner,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
but
go any
nothing
further
north.
Okay.
So it didn't help to pick Linda's brain. She couldn't even remember the main cafe was there. So anyway, so it was like, that didn't work.
And the other things that aren't on that list are some pictures I gotta go take. Pictures that she was using were blurry assessor pictures and pictures that didn't show the entire part of the building, upper floors. So
Okay.
just getting downtown and there's no cars parked in front of everything is what I need to do.
3 a.m. next one.
Yeah, real dark.
Real
Sunday
early.
morning.
Yeah.
I know you kind of shared your information from Pete this afternoon. Anything else that he had that we need to be aware of at this point?
When I talked to Pete on Monday, I need to call Ian Smith and Shippo, and I have a couple questions for her. Because it's Pete's understanding that the architectural historian, they usually provide those inventory forms for all the buildings in the whole district. And then when I had talked to her, she led me to believe she only needed the ones that were just in our grant. But maybe you have some
Yeah,
information on that.
it's just the ones in the grant.
Okay.
Unless you are applying for register's recognition for a historical district, which you're not doing. Maybe he didn't understand that. In Manning, we only did the ones for the application. They are in the process of getting a historic district, which includes more than what was in the application.
Since she's already working on this, I mean, would it be beneficial if we talked to her about doing that? You know, getting the historic district. I mean, just because in the future, those buildings would qualify for historic tax credits
Yeah.
after our grant's done with. They would only benefit those buildings.
What's the contract say? What do we have?
It was just for the 33 listed in the application.
Nope.
So if you want to do that, you would have to do another contract for that extra work, which might be beneficial to do.
Beneficial, but
But you're in budget time right now. Got any extra cash laying
I
around?
can tell you the recommendation will be no.
Anything else Pete shared with you that we need to be aware of? Okay, covered the highlights here.
No?
Where do you, I guess, jumping back up, when you meet with the business owners, where do you want to do that at? Does he want to do it?
We really haven't gone that far.
Okay, so whatever.
I'm
We'll
gonna
make-
work that out with Pete tomorrow morning.
Okay, I was gonna say, we'll make this.
Our
happen
discussion
before-
really happened 2 hours ago, right? 2 or 3 hours ago.
I could do it in the city council room too.
Certainly. Whatever's convenient.
Whoever's comfortable.
Okay. Other business?
I have 2 things, both of them are for Fred, or more for Fred, I guess. The first one is a question about on the CDBG grant. The applications for funding, should we be staggering all of them on an average percentage, like, or do you, as long as the final budget is the right percentages, is that all that matters?
Yeah. And we, as I was telling Anna coming in, that let's say we only had 20 buildings, we'd still get the 500,000, my understanding. And then of course the local match is going to change, and the number of buildings will change. We just do a contract amendment with the state, but that doesn't happen until after we have bids in and we know who's all in, what the scope of work is. Then we deal with that.
To give you an example, what I'm asking is during our sewer project where we had CDBG money involved, every application we had tried to put in was 80-20 on the bill. And my question to Fred is that do they have to all be done that way?
No.
Or as long as the final project shows up
Yeah.
by auditors that it was 80-20, we can do it how we
Manning,
want.
Karina set theirs up where the 500,000 would be used strictly just for construction and not for the engineer, publications, legal, and all that.
Okay.
And that's the first time I dealt with it that way, and it really confused the people there at first. I said, you can't do that, because I overmatched the local on the first draw. And I said, well, that's never been any problem with water and sewer. You have a problem when you undermatch. And then I got an email back and said, oh yeah, you were right, that's okay. So you can do it either way. Just do each bill as a percentage, or if you just want to do the 500,000 totally for construction, and we can work it either way, just as long as it comes out in the end for what the contract says.
I mean, it's more for us. But
Yeah.
just something I needed to ask.
Yeah.
And then the second question came from our auditor. We were doing our audit last week, and I asked her a question, and she suggested we talk to you guys first before getting back with her. And the question had to do with the private money going into this project. Her question was, do you guys have a plan in place yet on how that money will be handled? because, you know, the grant money, we do the reimbursement,
Mhm.
the city receives it. The city's portion is of course already sitting in our account. The question is how do we handle the private funds that are coming into it?
Manning has it sitting in whatever account Dawn has, and then that money will be paid out to the contractor at the end of the project to make up the difference then between the 500,000 and the extra money that they need for construction only.
I'm assuming we'd be putting it into some kind of a trust and agency account. That's,
Yeah.
I
You know
thought she
more about
answered
that than me.
I thought she answered that question for you that day. About how she ran that in and out.
well, I didn't see it in the notes when it was going over with the auditor.
I remember we talked about it, but
So those monies, those private dollars are paid up front with
Yes.
the building owners?
That was one of their recommendations
That's-
down in Manning, was that when when they turn in their final application to be part of this project, that at least a significant portion of their commitment based on the estimate.
Yeah, at the day they signed their easement and their construction agreement, that's when they paid half of their match up front for construction start.
it says here Manning went for the best visual impact, the need, and the historic quality. They had a 90-10 split on 112% of the project. And no project, if it goes above 112.5, it's the building owner's responsibility, which they ran into with Debs, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the two confusions that they go through my mind there, and of course I should probably check with Manning and ask him this question. Well, past the 112%, who's paying the bill? Is the city collecting from the businesses in order to collect past that 112%? Or are they being paid directly by the business that goes past it?
you couldn't pay it directly to the contractor, it'd all have to go through the city, doesn't it?
It goes to the city first,
Yeah.
It all
then to
has
the
to go
contractor.
to
And
the
the
city.
city pays the contractor.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the documentation and the paper trail of any change orders or any
Yep.
of those things.
Well, we'll have to
has
make
be
our side of what happens in those circumstances ironclad, because
Exactly.
the city can't find itself in a responsibility issue because somebody claims insolvency at that point. And then more public money is put into this as a result of that. That'll be a quagmire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My thought is that whatever their portion is, I would like to see that collected up front, all of it. It's just so if you get into a situation where somebody doesn't like something, it just eliminates that,
Yeah.
you know. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are, but, and then if there's any change orders or the scope of the project changes, again, we've got the contingency in there, but if it goes over that, then.
Because in a typical practice, if you fail to pay something to the city has certain powers to put liens on your property.
Yeah.
I'm not sure in this case that in this type of circumstance it would qualify under those powers. So,
We have a facade for 7 years.
Yeah,
We
you
have the
can
easement
put, the
for-
city can put a lien on an event that say, they're not keeping up the improvements for the 7 years, or if they didn't pay the second half of their down payment, something like that, the city could put a lien on. We've got that in the easement.
okay,
It's-
that's what I wanted to make
It's in
sure
the
of,
easement.
is that
Yep.
it's ironclad, explain what
Yep.
our powers.
Yep.
It's one thing to have a lien, it's another thing to have cash to pay the bill.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, that's why you want their contribution up front, and you've got it sitting in the coffers, ready to pay.
But what I was getting at was past the 112. We've got up to the 112 committed to the project.
They
If we
did.
go past the 112, there's no upfront money to cover past that 112.
That's where they said that they just made it understandable that it will not go beyond that point. It's all the owner's responsibility.
But responsibility of paying it.
And paying are two
Two
different
different
things.
things.
And that's something you have to agree on, so when I do the construction agreements, then I'll have that method of payment worded correctly.
And the businesses want to understand upfront what's
Yeah.
expected as far as when they have to give you the money.
Yeah.
We'll have to make sure we communicate that
Yeah.
at our late February meeting.
Do we need to make a recommendation as to, well, how can we without seeing the estimates?
Yeah. So-
I think there's going to be enough sticker shop going on that night, that we, or those 2 days, that we need to give them an opportunity, I figure, at least a week to digest it.
Yep.
What we'll be honing for that particular, over those 2 days, is who basically says, no, I'm no longer interested. Who we immediately,
Okay. So, next meeting time for us will be after Pete meets with the business owners and we have a feel for who's in, who's out.
would you want to do it, say, early March to get a report back on the February meetings, or do you want to wait till late March and hear back from what the final results are of the vetting process?
Both.
I guess.
I think we need to just stay, I think
On
we
top
just
of
need to
it.
stay on top of it and stay
And it
informed.
doesn't have to be a lengthy
We
meeting.
kind
No,
of
just, I
need
mean,
an
if we meet for
idea
20 minutes,
of
we
what
meet for
happened
20
after the
minutes.
meetings, I think.
In early March?
Wouldn't you all think, I'd want to know what happened.
I honestly don't think that people need a week and a half to think about it. A couple days, I think, in my opinion, should be good enough, because if they need more than that, then they're not interested anyway.
Well, unless they need to
Figure out their
visit with their bank and
fin-
figure out their
sort of
finances and apply for a loan, and those things take some time
Yeah.
to figure out, you know,
Figure
how
out
much of this is
where am I
grant,
gonna
how
go,
much
what
of
am
this
I
is
gonna
private
do?
dollars, you know, I mean, if I'm gonna spend 25 or 30 or $50,000 on my building, I need some time to figure out, okay, what is it I can and cannot afford to do, and it's gonna take me more than a day and a half to figure that out.
A week. Give them a
Yeah, I
week.
think a
I
week
would
is
give them at
plenty.
least a week, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
That's
big
reasonable.
commitment that they're making, and I don't think, you know, we should shorten that time frame and rush them into anything, because they need to make informed decisions.
Right.
We'll have a better idea for the next meeting after the 27th, I think.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably get a feel for half of them right there on the spot.
You know, we
Yeah.
also need to make them understand that if I decide to fix my building and Laura doesn't, then she really has no say over how much money, the size of my project is, you know? That if you
If you
cut.
give up your grant funds, you don't get to come to us and say, well, they shouldn't get that much money.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I'm
We're
saying.
government
Not your
backed. There's
deal.
you always have say.
Not your deal.
Well, what I'm saying is they need to understand that up front, that if they're
Sure.
gone
If
and,
they're done,
and,
it's
and more
done.
gets spent on
They're out of
Bobby's
it.
building, then that's tough, you know?
Part of the
so.
process.
yeah, you had your opportunity.
You had your
passed it up.
opportunity, exactly.
It's gonna be tough to have him come back 5 years from now and say, well, if you wouldn't spend so much on Bruce's building, I could have done Brandy's or something.
You
Yeah.
opted out.
That's right.
That was a decision that was made at that time, and there's
You
nothing
were
we can go
given the
back and do.
opportunity and you didn't take it.
What is Monday, March 10th? Any idea what that is?
I will be gone. I'm in Hawaii for 2 weeks.
Well.
Well, we
Think
won't
you're gonna
schedule
some-
around your
Don't
2 week
schedule,
stint in
yeah.
Hawaii.
Phone
You can do without
conference. Phone conference.
Yeah.
Call us from the beach, please.
Sorry.
March
I'll
10th.
Does a late afternoon work okay for everybody?
It'd have to be
Yes.
late, yeah.
You said March 10th?
I have to see my schedule.
March 10th?
Is that
Works for me.
Monday?
Monday, yeah.
I'll just come talk to Brandon about it
I don't
before
know
I
when
leave
my
my
schedule
schedule.
either.
2 weeks.
And again,
And I don't
it
do
doesn't have to
wrestling
be
meet that
a,
night, so.
it doesn't have to be a
Well, at least
long
I've got an
meeting,
idea
it's
now
just
how
a-
much I'm gonna spend on my floor over at
Are we
Pete's.
set on the 10th? You have something
What
that
do you
night?
put
I'm gonna be coming back.
Sometime
from
this
Illinois,
year.
so-
I mean, I'm fine with the 11th.
Kind of the dishwasher is going to
I'll be in
determine
Newman.
that,
12th, I'll be
when
here
that
13th.
comes out.
Can we go to the 12th?
Tear everything up and
12th?
You got something on the
move
12th?
it.
March
I don't
We
12th.
did that in
Well,
2000. My 10-year-old
Try
son
that?
helped me install it. Really
Just
liked
clip
it.
together?
We'll tentatively plan
Just
on
clips
the 12th,
together and-
we'll
Did
send
you
out
use
an
any
email
glue or is it a
the
float?
week
No,
before,
it's floating.
Oh, cool.
just to see what everybody's schedules are.
yeah.
Same
Well, Fred,
time.
have a safe trip.
Yep.
Steve, are you talking same time?
4:30? Does that work
That
for
works,
everybody?
that works.
Is that a convenient
So
time?
she can send it.
No, but I make it work.
Okay.
You may end up with Charlie here.
That's
Again.
fine. He's welcome.
As long as Max is here, he'll be fine.
26 and 27 is when you're going to start plans. You need pictures of North.
Yeah.
Old pictures of North.
I have them of, like the Viking Bay, because that used to be the city hall, so I have those. I don't have
Yeah,
any
yeah,
on the other side of the street.
Jansen has all kinds of movies. Now, we're talking the 50s, you were
Points.
before that probably. See,
No.
Colburn and Son used to be there. That used to be Colburn and Son on the
Sure.
corner of Liston.
The one where the, okay, which
There
one?
was the
Next to
sporting goods
Viking Bay.
store.
Oh, you're talking about Viking Bay, yeah, okay, yeah.
Sporting goods store, before that it was Colburn and Son. And
Does she have any across the street? Because we don't have any pictures of the theater either.
But she's got video when your band used to march down, or on Memorial Day, they'd march, the band would march to the cemetery, and she's got some video. I think it's all on 20, but there may be some going that way.
If we could grab something
that
off
you-
of there.
I'll have her go through all of her old movies.
North Fifth is a tough one for us.
All right.
For
It's
some
funny
reason.
how
Nobody
that
was
happens.
interested.
It was like somebody's like, don't take a picture
Don't
of
take a
those
picture of
guys.
those
It's like, okay.
guys.
Because there's some question as to the bank and where it stopped and then the short building.
Yes, Jeannie Green, 'cause Bert O'Connor used to.
You know another one we don't have a picture of? Chiefs. There's no head-on shot of Chiefs anywhere. He
from the
never
corner.
took a picture of it. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. We've looked at
Did that
for
big
years.
postcard that I sent to you by email, doesn't that go down far enough to catch Chiefs?
But
It's
there's
not
no,
straight on,
no
no.
straight on
straight
shot.
on, no.
Straight on.
There is of the side by the alley that used to be the sex center. There's plenty of pictures of that. There's not of
But
Chiefs.
you haven't asked Jeannie Green, have you?
Mm-mm.
Because with Bert O'Connor, I mean, Jeannie Green lived up.
Right, in that upper story where Aunt P was.
I know, but I don't think anybody ever took a picture of the building. I have a picture of Jerry and a friend of his leaning on a parking meter with the theater in the background. That's as close as I have.
Well, I'll see what I can come up with. I'll talk to you.
Okay,
It's
okay, do that because we'll take anything we can get.
Anything else for this afternoon then? You'll let us know when you hear from Pete on kind of the timeline, kind of just see what that is. Motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna send those historic pictures to Lee tonight. Will you be able to get her the other pictures in the next day or two? I mean,
Well, as long
we
as
should
I can
ask,
get some pictures of that cars in front of us.
we should ask Fred, when is her deadline to get that back, those sign inventories back to us?
Pete is asking when she's going to be done, but.
Shall I just ask her when I email her? When are you gonna get these to
Yep.
her?
Is that a motion to adjourn?
That's a
Yeah.
motion.
Oh, I thought you made it.
No, I can't.
That's a
You
motion.
can't?
You're not a voting
He's
member.
not a voting,
No,
he
I'm
wasn't
ex acto.
selected for the committee. He's
Yes,
just
I didn't know that.
working on it.
Did you have a second?
I didn't hear a second, no.
He can declare it.
Sure in a second.
I'll say. Sounds good.
All those
I
in
was gonna
favor?
make it up.
Aye.
Aye.